Our bulk order of pears just got here, and I'm going to be making some pear sauce today, so I will show you how I do that. So first thing I've done is I have washed all of my pears, and then I have gotten out my Nesco roaster, just like this. It's a big, I don't know how many quarts it is, but it's a pretty decent size one. It has a stainless steel insert. I really like the stainless steel ones because they hold up really well. So I have those two things, and then I just have a bowl to put my scraps in. So here we go. First thing I do is I just cut these pears in half. I'm going to be leaving the skins on for this, and just taking out the cores. I've got 2 roasters full now of cut up pears, and the next step is you're going to want to add a little bbit of water at the bottom so these don't burn when they start to cook. So I have 2 cups of water that I've poured over each of these roasters. Then the reason why I love cooking in roasters is that you can use these to work for your schedule. So for example, if I want to can these today, I'll crank up the heat as high as they can go, and they'll be ready to process in probably an hour or 2. But if I want to can these, let's say if I want to keep these in the roaster today and then get to them tomorrow morning, then I'll just put them on a really low setting, let them just simmer and cook slowly, and they'll be ready for me in the morning. So it just allows for a lot of flexibility cooking in containers like this. So if you don't have roasters, you can cook these on the stove. You would just add them to a really large pot, and you would obviously add water to the bottom of your pot, but then you're stuck at the stove. That's the reason why I don't like cooking my things. I don't want to be stuck in my kitchen for hours on end. This just frees up a ton of time for me. You can also cook them in a smaller crock pot if you don't have a big batch like this, but for what I do, and I like to do things in bigger batches, this works out really well for me. So all I'm going to do, I want to can these today, so I'm going to crank up the steam to the steam setting, so all the way up, and these will be cooked down and ready to go in a few hours. Alright, my pears have been in my roaster for quite a while now. They are nice and soft. You want them to be soft enough that they kind of mush apart when you touch them. Then you know they're ready to go. So this is what they'll look like. They'll be nice and soft. You should be able to just have them kind of come apart really easily like that. Now something you'll notice is there's a ton of liquid, and I only started out with a cup of water, or 2 cups of water in here. So if you blend up all this juice in here right now, you're going to have pear juice, and you don't want that. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the sink, and I'm going to strain off as much of the liquid as I can. Alright, so I'm going to pour the liquid away from me and just drain off as much of that as I can. I do want to keep some because I don't want this to be too dry, so I am going to reserve a little bit of that liquid in the bottom. So what I've done is I've poured the liquid off and I've kept it, and the reason why I like to keep the liquid is because I hate wasting things, and this juice is actually very flavorful, so I will oftentimes save this, pour it into ice cube trays, and then store them in my freezer in Ziploc bags, and then when I want to make a smoothie or something, it adds really good pear flavoring to my smoothies. So I never throw that juice away. I suppose you could probably use it as well to make jelly if you're into doing that, but I just usually freeze it and then add it to smoothies. Alright, my pears are all strained out, and now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Vitamix and I'm going to fill up this container here. About 3/4 of the way up, and then I'm just going to blend it all up. Alright, you want to blend it really well so that none of the peels are left in there. So it's nicely blended up. I'm just going to pour it into my empty roaster, and then I'm going to just keep repeating this process until I have all of these blended up. Alright, the next thing that I've done is I've heated this all back up so it's nice and hot again, and then I'm going to ladle it into my sanitized clean jars, leaving an inch headspace up at the top. So just go through. I don't add anything else to this pear sauce. Pear sauce is really sweet already, so you don't need to, but I suppose if you wanted, you could add some sugar. You can add cinnamon. You can make it just to how you like it, and then can it that way. So we prefer it just plain like this. It's very sweet already and just has such a great flavor. Alright, my jars are all filled, and so I'm ready to move on to the next step. So I had two 18-quart roasters filled to the top with sliced pears, and that all cooked down, and it's going to give me 14 quart jars of pear sauce. So the first thing I'm going to do now that the jars are filled is I'm going to wipe down the tops right here of the jars. All the rims need to be nice and clean, otherwise your jars will not seal. So I'm going to get those wiped down. The next step is to put the lids on, and I'm using the reusable lids, and they're from Tatler. If you're using the regular one-time use lids, it's the same thing. I'm just going to set the lids right on top. And I will mention you want to leave an inch headspace when you're filling your jars. Alright, and then the next step is I'm going to go ahead and screw on my bands. Now that my lids are all on, I'm going to move these over to the canner. To start canning process, I always fill my canner about halfway full with really warm water. I never want to have it boiling, because if the temperature of your jars is cooler than the boiling water, you could risk cracking your jar. So I always just do hot water from the tap, and then I go ahead and will load my canner up. My canners are now on the stove and they're ready to go. In my bigger canner I can fit 12 quart jars, and then the last two have to go in a smaller canner. So now that I have the heat going, I'm going to bring that up to a really gentle boil. Once it gets to a gentle boil, I'm going to start my timer, and these are going to can for 20 minutes. You want to keep the water only at a gentle boil, so if it gets too hot you're going to want to turn it down. So you're going to time it for 20 minutes at a gentle boil, and then you will be done. Alright, the timer has gone off on my canners, and I have taken the lids off and I've let the steam just escape for 5 minutes, and now I'm going to take them out. So all you want to do is take them out and set them on a towel, or just not directly on your countertops, because they're very hot, the jars are, and that will ruin your countertops. So the only different step here that I'm going to have to do with using these reusable lids is, after they come out of the canner, you need to put, like I use a hot pad and an oven mitt, and I crank down the tops. But if you're using the one-time use lids, then all you have to do is pull them out of the canner and you are done. So now I'm going to leave these sit on the counter for at least 12 hours before I move them. Then in the morning I'm going to take off the lid or the bands and make sure everything's sealed, and if they've sealed, then I can enjoy them all winter long. If you have any questions about anything you saw in the video, please feel free to leave them in the comments below.